9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds. The world you don't know. The world you don't know. 9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds.
Now, folks, you're very welcome along to the show. It is Monday, the 1st of August, 2016. I was born in August. All great people are born in August, in case you didn't know. That's that out of the way. Now, I've got a nice show lined up for you tonight. I have a good guest coming on. I've got somebody from Direct Democracy Ireland coming on. No, it's not Ben Gilroy. I had Ben on before, but unfortunately that didn't go down too well. But I do have a guy coming on, and we're going to be talking about the banks, and in particular a landmark historic ruling that was laid down by the High Court last Thursday, I think it was. Basically what's been handed down is, and it was Ben Gilroy who secured this judgment, he basically proved that nearly all, if not all, or most of evictions that were handed out in the circuit court were all unlawful evictions. So there's not a lot about it in the mainstream media. They did run the story, but they haven't really gone into the finer details of it. I hope to go into the finer details of it tonight and what it actually means for anybody who did lose their home via the circuit court over the last few years. I mean, as I've said on this show many, many times, we bailed out the banks. This country bailed the banks out to the tune of 120 billion plus. The banks were already paid for all of their losses, because when they have loans like mortgages and bonds and you name it, this, that and the other, it's all insured. So as soon as the market crashes for them, they just cash in their insurance policies. They never lose out. Like mortgages, for example, have what's known as securitisation, which means if you take out a mortgage, that loan is insured by the bank with another party. And if you can't pay your mortgage for whatever reason, i.e. an economic crash, you lose your job or whatever, you get sick and you can't work, that mortgage is insured. So they don't lose out. They still get the full amount that they were owed. But what's going on in this country is not only did we bail out the banks, and we bailed out bondholders who even government ministers didn't know the names of, nothing trickled down to the people. The people weren't bailed out. What should have happened in this country, if they gave the banks 120 billion, there should have been a significant mortgage write-down, but there wasn't. And people were left high and dry losing their homes. People are committing suicide because they're losing their homes. And this is wrong. Now, I have a guy called Anthony Connor coming on now in a few minutes. I'm going to get him on via Skype. And we're going to be talking about the banks. We're going to be talking about a lot of other things as well, not just the banks. I mean, this all ties in with a lot of other things like Agenda 21 that I've spoke about on the show before, the elimination of all private property worldwide. This is not just an Ireland problem, this is a worldwide problem. The mess that is the European Union. We're going to be talking about a referendum to get us out of the European Union, and I think we should have a referendum in this country to get us out of the European Union. The British, there's a side story to why Britain got out of the European Union that you probably don't know about, but I'll get into that during the show anyway, hopefully bring that to your attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a song. I'm going to play Chris Ray, since we are on a road to hell. I'm going to play the road to hell. So have a listen to this, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and hopefully I'll have Anthony on. So talk to you very shortly.
On LiffeySoundFM.ie and on 96.4 FM, this is Liffey Sound News.
Cool, no problem. All right. Now, folks, you're very welcome back. Now, I'm going to go to Skype now. I'm going to ring my guest and get him on. It's ringing there now. Sorry about the delay. I have the guy that was on before me there is in the studio, and he saves his show for his podcast. It's fairly slow for some reason on the computer. I don't know why, but he left me his number, and I'm going to try and save the file for him later on. Anyway, moving on. I do have Anthony Connor, should I say, on the phone, and we're going to be talking about, as I said, the recent judgment in the High Court that basically says that a lot of the evictions that took place in the Circuit Court were null and void. They were unlawful. It shouldn't have happened. They didn't have jurisdiction. And this is to do with the rateable value of a house and stuff like that. But I'm going to get more into that and other subjects as well. So we'll go off on a tangent and see where it takes us anyway. So for the next hour, I'm going to be talking to James, or the next 50 minutes at the least. So sit back and enjoy the show. And if you are in trouble with your mortgage, listen closely. You might learn something. So talk to us very soon. Thank you. Now, good evening, Anthony. Are you there?
I am indeed, Mick. Thanks.
Brilliant. Listen, I was talking to you today, and we got a little bit of a brief bio. I didn't have a chance to read a bio about the computer here is running extremely slow. Now, I did tell the listeners before the break there, I went to a song, that you are a member of Direct Democracy Ireland, and you are an avid campaigner when it comes to evictions and people who are in difficulty with their homes. In my opinion, people like yourself and Ben Gilroy and others are the unsung heroes of this country. You know, you are out there. You're at the cold face of this problem, and you're doing your best to help people. So can you tell me what's your opinion on the judgment that was handed down on the High Court on Thursday?
Well, I think it was a crucial judgment. I think it's rocked the banking system, if not the whole entire court system. But I just need to clarify one point. You said in your opening lines there that Ben Gilroy was the person who obtained this judgment. It was actually Byron Jenkins and the lads from the Hub. Right. That, in fairness to them, and they done great work there.
Yeah, Ben did say that in his post. I just seen Ben's post of the day where he made the announcement that this judgment had passed down. So my mistake, I stand corrected.
But I mean, I know when we do affidavits for the courts, we've been mentioning the fact that the circuit courts didn't have jurisdiction. For the last 3 years, we've been pointing that out. Now,
but he just fobbing you off every time you go into court in that respect.
Yeah, literally. I mean, but you have to remember, we're dealing with judges and people in the judicial system who have little or no understanding of the Irish Constitution. They're not aware of people's rights. And the reason for that is because we as a people accept the fact that we don't use our Constitution to its full capacity. So when you take, articles in the Constitution, like Article 40.5, which protects the family home.
Yeah, the home is inviolable except in accordance with law.
Yeah. So we have courts, on a daily basis ignoring that fact as well. But in relation to the judgment that was scored last Thursday, and the reason why it's so significant is, again, if you have the Land League, you have the Hub, all these different organisations who are helping people, who have been saying that they didn't have jurisdiction. And we've had judges, we've had registrars, masters of the court, so forth, ignoring that. So literally what the significance of the judgment, what it means now is that there's going to be dire consequences when the courts reopen now in September. And we're looking forward to now going into the court and looking for strikeouts and so forth in relation to cases that are before the courts. Because precedence has been set in one of the highest courts in the land. And a registrar or a circuit court judge will not be able to ignore that.
Now, I can't help thinking that the government, as slimy as they are with their corporate handlers, are going to come up with some sort of a scheme, some sort of retroactive legislation to try and counteract this judgment. Do you think that might happen, or can it happen?
Well, this is why we are where we are, because they tried that. They tried that in 2009 with the Land and Conveyancing Reform Act. And then they amended it then in 2013 to allow the circuit courts to defraud the people. And I couldn't believe when I read that act that, number one, the Labour Party let it go through. That's the most astonishing thing. I mean, with the likes of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, you'd expect that from them. But with the Labour Party now, it was an astonishing piece of legislation to let go through.
I read an article yesterday, I think it was in the Independent, on the online version, on the app on the phone. And it was an article by Mick Wallace in relation to NAMA and stuff like that. And he was basically saying that if he was to let the people know what what really is going on in relation to Nama and the sale of this country, like, people will be absolutely disgusted, horrified and shocked. But not only that, he was saying that when he started out in business in the building game, and I'd met Mick Wallace. I met Mick Wallace many years ago when I was working in the construction industry, and I just briefly met him on the street and said hello. He's a very nice man, and I always admired him, because you see him popping up in the papers and all every now and again. And he was saying in this article yesterday he's broke now, but he wants to get back into building and stuff like that when he gets out of politics. But he was basically saying he has unfinished business. I hope he exposes a lot of them, I really do. But what he was saying was he was recounting an encounter he had with some other businessmen back in the early days of when he was starting up his business, maybe in the early 90s or 80s or whatever it was. And the guy said to him in the bar, listen, if you want to succeed in this game, join Fianna Fáil. Otherwise you're going to get nowhere. And he didn't join any of them. He went on his own, and you see what happened to Mick Wallace. The crash completely destroyed his business, Wallace Construction.
Absolutely.
But even he was highlighting in that article yesterday, like, the kind of corruption that if you want to make it in this country, you need to join Fianna Fáil.
That's why I'm astonished with the attitude of the Irish people. I mean, it's frustrating, I suppose, would be the proper word to use, because, I mean, those of us who, like yourself, and those of us who educate ourselves on exactly what's happening and how corrupt the system is, and what the hidden agendas are behind everything that they do. The ordinary Joe Soap who just gets on with their life, and fair play to them. I don't discourage anybody from doing that. But the problem is that in doing what they're doing, by ignoring certain things that happen within this country, they're facilitating corruption. They're facilitating the fact that we as a people are being stripped away of our rights on a daily basis. I mean, when you hear comments like a TD done in a courtroom recently, he's a lovable rogue. I mean, those kind of comments to me just absolutely. That's
pure. It's Gombianism is what that is. That's how I see that.
Yeah. It just baffles me.
It was if you remember, if you cast your mind back to when Charles Haughey was alive, and the amount of corruption that came out about that man, and the Charvet shorts and stuff like that. So all people kept saying at the time was, didn't he give us the clothing and footwear allowance? The women were saying this, and sure, he's a grand fella, he's not the worst. There's worse than him out there.
Yeah.
And he's the lesser of two evils. Comments like that, and I was saying, this fella made millions on the backs of the people while he was telling people to tighten their belts.
Yeah, I read an article recently. The day he made that interview where he said we need to tighten our belts, he bought a painting for £2 million.
That's ridiculous. It's just not, and yet people think that's quite, I suppose, acceptable.
Well, it is. I mean, if you look at the rise of Fianna Fáil, I mean, that's astonishing in itself. The party that brought the country to its knees, absolutely decimated this country. I mean, they're talking about, Irish water being set up to, men water pipes and everything. I mean, they weren't too worried when the champagne was flowing down the Galway tents about pipes and so forth. And now they're taking the moral high ground on a lot of issues. And I just can't believe that people are accepting. I just can't believe. I mean, we as you opened up with their, direct democracy and the anti-eviction task force and the hub and the land league and so forth. We're in the courtroom on a regular basis. Yeah. I'm in the courtroom twice a week. I've yet to see anybody from a mainstream party there.
I've seen an article the other day by a chap called Joe Ducey, who's been doing quite a lot of talking, I suppose, on social media about Garda corruption and political corruption, etc., etc. And he put a post up saying that, and I believe it. When you see a guy sentenced to 5 years there last week by a judge in the circuit court for harassing a guard. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of the case, but I think 5 years for harassment is a bit strict. It's a bit much, to be honest with you, considering the same judge a day later sentenced a rapist or something to 4 years. It's a bit, where's the justice? Justice needs to be seen to be done. It doesn't need to be abused, and that's why people have no faith in the justice system. And nor should they have any faith in the justice system, because it is corrupt.
I mean, in our manifesto for the general election, Direct Democracy Ireland were very clear in relation to what we would want to see Ireland progress, to become, a nation where, we could all be proud of our country again. And one of those things we put forward was a Bill of Rights. And, I believe that as it stands, we don't have a right to justice in this country. We think we do. We don't have a right to home. We don't have a right to water. We don't have a right to health. I mean, we don't even have a right to education. These are the things that we feel we need to get back to basics. in relation to how we move forward in our
But
country.
can you see a way back, though? I mean, the only way I could see this country getting back to the way it was is if the economy completely crashes overnight, that nobody's got nothing, and it forces communities to come together.
Well, you see, I disagree with that to a certain degree, and I'll tell you why.
That's just my opinion now. That's not anything that's laid in stone or anything.
You're not the first person to say that to me, actually. You know me.
I mean, I wouldn't like to see that happen, but that's the only way I see people finally waking up and realising who your bloody neighbours are.
Yeah.
You know, because nobody knows anybody anymore. You know, we don't know what's going on in other people's houses. We don't know the struggles other people are having. And all these struggles go unnoticed.
They do to a certain degree, but I think now we've turned into a nation of people who turn a blind eye. Once we shut our own front door, we're not really bothered about anybody else. And unfortunately, I mean, we lived in a society where, I mean, I'm 43 years of age, and I grew up in a time where you could leave your front door open. Neighbours looked out for each other. You know, everybody helped out each other. I mean, you know, back in the day when if a man went on strike, the rest of the families rallied together to make sure that the family had...
I mean, I grew up in the 80s like yourself. I'm only a year older than yourself, Anthony. So I grew up in Dublin South Inner City, where people had no money and there were no jobs. And I remember the communities years ago. They used to get out, like we lived in a block of flats. And, you know, as much derision as flats come under these days by the mainstream media, that they're kips and stuff like that. Yes, some of them are kips, and because I've lived in them, so I'm speaking from experience. But one thing we had back in those days that we don't have in them nowadays is a sense of community.
Yeah. You see, when you have a society where they base everything on economy and not community, there's the problem. So, I mean, when was the last time you heard Enda Kenny talking about, you know, a case where somebody was home and so forth? He talks about figures. We're allocating €2 million for modular homes and so forth. So it's all about economics. But we need to get back to a situation where we're dealing with communities. And our belief in direct democracy is that the only way this can happen is to reinstate Articles 47 and 48, which will give the power of direct democracy back to the people.
That's the right to referendum. Right
to referendum, but not only from a national level, but from a local level. And, you know, if you have plebiscites would be local referendums. So if you have plebiscites locally, you are in a position then to be able to, you know, say how your council runs, for example. Like, I mean, I can give you an example locally here. I'm in Drogheda here in County Louth. And in 2007, the Labour Party proposed the purchase of a building for €12 million. Now, after some negotiations, the council agreed to pay $9.5 million. That building is now worthless. It's not even worth. I think the last figure on it was 130,000, something along that line. Now, nobody was held to account for that. That was serious mismanagement of funds. Now, as a result now, as you know, each local authority has control of the property tax. So as a result, they're only paying off the interest at the moment. But as of next February, they have to start paying off the principal sum. The only way they're going to be able to do this is to raise the property tax locally here in Drogheda. And we as a people can't do anything about it. If we had direct democracy, we could call a plebiscite.
Yeah. Hang on a minute, we didn't create that's your problem. You deal with it.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? And somebody should be held to account for that. I mean, I won't mention names, but the councillor who proposed it is now a senator. He was a TD, but he's a senator now. And the other guy is still a councillor to this day. And they were never held to account for that mismanagement of funds. Now, even though it was agreed and so forth. But a plebiscite locally, for example, the population of Drogheda, I think is around 12,000, give or take. And in order for that plebiscite to work, if I called a referendum on that issue, I'd have to obtain, would say, 1,000 signatures for that to become...
which is quite doable, and this is the reason they removed the article from the Constitution in the first place, because they knew what the ramifications of that were.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, our forefathers, and they drafted that Constitution.
They were very, very smart people. They knew what that meant. Yeah, very smart men.
Absolutely. Now, but it's also worth noting that the Constitution we operate now was put together very quickly. It was put together in a very short space of time. So what they done was they mismatched a lot of articles from different constitutions around the world. Now, Article 47 and 48 obviously come from the Swiss Constitution. Now, what we need to do is, we need to, because they were removed illegally. You know what I mean? There was no referendum to remove those articles.
They were just taken out, yeah.
They were removed by the Fine Gael party in 1936. Now, what we need to do is we need to reinstate those articles, but we need them duly amended to modern standards. So as they would suit, like, I mean, for example, we would need it to take in financial issues and so forth.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a different world today than what it was when the article was written. I do understand that, so obviously we'll need to modify it. But the same principle should still remain, that if X amount of people decide we want to have a referendum and you allocate the right amount of signatures, well, then a referendum should be called on any issue. I mean, if we'd have had a referendum for the bank bailout, it would have never have happened.
Well, that's one thing Direct Democracy Ireland is calling for.
Yeah.
We're calling for a full and legal and lawful review of the bank bailout.
We should be looking for a lawful review of our membership of the European Union. Listen, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I need to go to a break, Anthony, so would you mind muting your microphone for a minute or two?
No problem at all.
Folks, we'll be back in 2 minutes with Anthony Conn. I'll talk to you very shortly.
Broadcasting to Lucan, this is Liffey Sound, 96.4 FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. Now, just before I go back to Anthony, I have a very quick community announcement to read out. It's the logo competition. I did mention this a few weeks ago on the show, but I want to read out a quick announcement. Liffey Sound 96.4 FM have been broadcasting as Lucan's community radio since 2006. This year we celebrate our 10-year anniversary, and to celebrate we are launching a new logo competition, and we want you to design the logo. The winner will receive a cash prize of €100. And we'll also have the opportunity to come into the studio and talk about the design live on the radio. As we are a community station, we want to include all aspects of Lucan. We are a community enriched with local history, beautiful scenery and many activities. As Liffey Sound is your station, your voice, we would like to celebrate diversity, culture and our people. The deadline for the logo submission is Friday the 12th of August 2016 at 5 p.m. That's Friday the 12th of August. That's 11 days' time. One design entry can be submitted per person, and we broadcast a wide range of music, sport, chat and local news. Check out our schedule on the current website for more information and inspiration for your design. And that's www.liffeysoundfm.ie. I'll catch up on Facebook and Twitter. Now please email your entries to info@liffeysoundfm.ie. That's info@liffeysoundfm.ie. Or post it into Liffey Sound 96.4 FM, Ballyone Castle Community Centre, Ballyone, Lucan, County Dublin. And please do include your name, contact details and a small description of your design and your motivation behind it. So if you want to win yourself €100, get in there. Now, I've got a couple of texts that Ray just sent in. I'm going to read them out just before I go back to Anthony. Ray says, I can remember in your area when I was a kid, there was not a single car, none. I was shocked when I come over to see almost 2 cars in every driveway. Funny enough, a friend of mine was only talking about that the other day. He grew up in that area in the 50s, Ray, and his father was one of only 3 people on Sundrive Road to own a car. And in them days, he was saying you couldn't park your car on the street, you had to put it in a lockup. It cost him £5 a week or something, I think he was saying. And the only thing on wheels was a horse and a cart. Also, no one had TV, not a single one on any street. And people didn't lock their doors because there was nothing worth stealing. Well, that's very true, Ray, very, very true. Anyway, I'm going to go back to Anthony. Anthony, you still with me? Hello?
Yeah, I am indeed.
That's grand. How are you doing, Andy? Now, what we were talking about there before the break, it sort of went in then to mention the European Union. Now, as we've seen with Brexit, the British, I suppose, people are thinking that the British woke up and done a run out of the EU. Now, I was reading a blog yesterday where some guy came up with a theory that they were told to get out of the EU because in order for them to stay in the EU would have to have succumbed to too many concessions that the British wanted. So they were told, have a referendum and get out, and we'll go ahead with our super state project without you. And I think that's what they're going to try and do now. Without Europe or without Britain now muddying the waters for them, there's no one else now to upset the apple cart unless other countries start doing what the British done and demanding a referendum for membership. What do you think? Do you think we should get out?
Well, I'm a Eurosceptic. I'm not anti-EU, I'm definitely a Eurosceptic. But I believe that the Irish people should be demanding a referendum, if anything, to open the debate on where Ireland's future lies within the EU. As it stands, we are being dictated to, we're being lied to, we're being defrauded. The country is being looted. And unless we make a stand against the EU bureaucrats, this is the way it's always going to be. The federalist agenda that's alive and well in Europe is being propped by the Irish people because we so willingly give up so much of our rights. I done an astonishing bit of research there recently where The EU Commission is passing up to 129 laws a day.
I read that today on your Facebook page. I had a look at that story.
I couldn't believe it. And that's since 1994. Okay, now that seems like an awful lot, but some of them would be trivial laws.
Yeah, your banana has to be a certain shade of yellow. And,
absolutely.
I think they did all that. Now looking back, because I remember all this in England and all. People were giving out about the shape of their cucumbers and other ridiculous, stupid laws that you have to be this way and that way and this way. Yeah. I think they threw all those stupid laws in just so nobody would bother noticing the ones that have a really serious effect on you.
Yeah, a friend of mine actually was over in Brussels recently, and he was in the European Parliament, and he's a journalist, and he asked Martin Schulz, what about the disconnect between the EU Parliament and the citizens of Europe? And his response was shocking. His response was, what disconnect? So what they've done is they've surrounded themselves in a bubble where, they're all surrounded by wealthy people. They're all, getting on with their daily lives, and they're totally disconnected from the reality of what's happened to EU citizens. Now, if you look at some, I seen a great speech in the Dáil there recently by Paul Murphy from the Anti-Austerity Alliance talking about the EU battle groups. This is something that our government, successful governments have told us would never happen.
But no. You're talking about the European Army, is it?
Yes.
Oh, that's going to happen. There's no doubt about that.
Well, the Irish have already sent, I think it's, I stand to be corrected, 150 soldiers to force the EU battle group. Now, that's astonishing. I stand to be corrected on that figure, by the way. But that's astonishing, given the fact that
we're a neutral country, allegedly.
Yes. Well, see, here's the point: we don't have an army. We have a defence force.
Yes, that's true.
So we don't have an army. Yes. So, number one, they're acting outside the Constitution, which is very, very, very serious. And number two, as a defence force, we're a neutral country. For example, again, I'm reverting back to the Direct Democracy Ireland manifesto, and I'd strongly recommend that people go on to directdemocracyireland.ie and download it, and you'll see exactly where we wanted to go with this. I mean, point 35 of our manifesto, we were looking to initiate a referendum to hold Ireland's position as neutrality as a constitutional protection. And people were looking at us, thinking, she's mad. Ireland is a neutral country. Ireland is far from a neutral country.
I mean, if you just take Shannon into account, that blows neutrality out the water straight away. The fact that we're allowing American military aircraft to refuel not only their aeroplanes, but to refuel their troops. I mean, they stay over for 8 or 9 hours, have a rest period, and then fly on out. There's no doubt they're flying weapons out there as well. I mean, the soldiers carry their own guns with them. It's not as if they pack them away in boxes.
I worked in the airport, and I can tell you now, as a competent witness, I witnessed American soldiers carrying arms. I witnessed it.
I would well believe it. I mean,
there was a case down in Ennis recently where a man stole a gun. Did you hear about this case?
I didn't know.
He actually stole a gun from an aircraft, and he got caught, and he was brought to court. But the judge dismissed the charges against him, even though they had overwhelming evidence. And the reason he dismissed it was because he'd have to admit there was guns in Shannon.
On that aircraft brought into Shannon. So another thing as well, that I copped this a long, long time ago, that blows our neutrality out thing. I seen an article in a newspaper back in the 90s, just after the invasion of Iraq, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait that time in 1991. And I remember reading this article that an electronics firm, an American electronics firm, mind you, out in Leixlip in County Kildare, were developing guidance systems for the Patriot missile. So I'm saying to myself, well, if they're making the guidance system here in Dublin, or in Kildare, in Ireland, in Leixlip, fair enough, it's an American country, but there are Irish people who are putting these components together, and then they've been shipped off then to Lockheed Martin in America and put into Patriot missiles. How are we neutral? I mean, those missiles wouldn't hit their targets if it wasn't for the efforts of Irish people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll try and say this without being negative, although it's hard. I think it's only a matter of time before Ireland has a terrorist attack. And that's
it's going to happen. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I remember seeing, I don't know if you've seen these pictures that were released a couple of years ago by the Israeli embassy here in Dublin. Now, there was a bit of a stink about it at the time, but the mainstream media ran the story and then it was gone. But I've been following it ever since, and I've been keeping my eye on it. They put out these pictures. One was the Molly Malone dressed in a burqa with a rocket launcher on her shoulder. Another one then was, and the caption was, Israel now, Dublin next. Then there was one for France, for Paris. There was one for Italy. There was one for Denmark. all the places that were, except for Dublin so far and Italy, all the places that were in these pictures have been hit with terrorist attacks by ISIS, you know.
So who's responsible if it happens? Because we have a government telling us... I was only listening to the radio the other day where an attack is unlikely. Now, this is what's been put on... Because I know people are concerned. I'll be honest. I'm concerned about it myself whenever I go... If I go to a game of football or if I go to any of these events, I'm looking for the exits. I'm looking for... especially if I have my children with me. Because these are the things that you have in your mind. Now, our government is telling us not to worry. And that makes me worried. Because any government should be, who has the interest of people at heart should say, keep your eyes open. If you see anything suspicious, report it straight away. Any suspicious activity, report it. They don't want to hear about anything like that. Okay? Now, the thing about it is, we live in a society now where if you suspect your neighbour of being, we'll say, maybe harbouring a terrorist or has beliefs in, Islam or whatever it may be, you could be deemed as a racist. I wouldn't be surprised if you got charged for ringing up and saying, listen, I think the guy next door might be making bombs, I'm not sure. I'd say you might be arrested for making a racist remark.
But if you look at the way the media have been playing this out, especially in the UK, not to mention Donald Trump in America, the way he's banging on about Muslims and stuff like that. Yeah. If I was a Muslim, I'd be extremely worried right now.
In America or overall?
Anywhere in the world.
Well, I
with the kind of rhetoric,
I have friends who are Muslims now, and I speak to them regularly about these issues, and even they're concerned. They're concerned. They would be probably more in the know in relation to how these things, how these organisations can form, and how the countries that they come from. And as I said, they're concerned, and unless our government come out and start saying to people, look, you just need to be observant and report anything suspicious. I think we're leaving ourselves wide open.
But see, and I've seen this in Angela Merkel there in Germany the other day is urging all Germans. They're saying we can't fight terrorism without the help of the public. And basically, it harks back to what you've just said there, that they're expecting people now to, I'm not saying rat out their neighbours, but keep their eye on their Muslim neighbours. Now, I think that's wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
That's like telling us here in Ireland to keep our eye on every traveller person that might be around you,
Just to clarify my point is that, I wouldn't say to anybody that unless you really have strong beliefs that something untoward has happened in a home, it doesn't have to be a Muslim home, we're dealing with a lot of dissidents on a lot of issues, report it, and don't be afraid to report it, but, be very careful, in relation to stigmatising people and, making wrong accusations and so forth.
I mean, we are living in very dangerous times, there's no doubt about that. With the European Union, what's your opinion on the refugee crisis that's engulfing Europe at the moment? Do you think it's deliberate? Do you think it's just accidental, down to bad management? What do you think is the issue going on here?
Well, first off, I think it's absolutely disgusting that we're paying €6 billion a year to Turkey to take care of these refugees, and any video I see, I've yet to see a decent one. The Turkish military are beating them back with sticks and batons and everything. And that's been paid for by EU taxes and European, Irish taxes. I do believe that if America and other countries, other nations like that, kept their nose out of foreign nations' businesses, we wouldn't have the refugee crisis that we have today. A lot of people are forced to leave their homes, and I feel so sorry when I watch, the videos of them coming with their children, and you hear children dying on the route to get to certain places. So it's heartbreaking. But at the same time, I think Ireland needs to be very, very careful about how we deal with the refugee crisis. We don't vet people coming into this country. I think we should have some system where we can, have a system where we can vet people. I know it's very hard to vet people who don't come, they don't have proper documentation, so forth. But I think we should have some sort of database where if they're rejected from one country, that we should have a database where we get the reason why they were rejected from that country. And maybe we might be in a position then to help people who genuinely need the help.
I think that I was reading an article there over the weekend as well. The government announced that there's new data laws now going to be coming in and stuff like that, where They're going to have access to terrorist watch lists and stuff like that, access to people's emails, but it's going to be so broad that it's going to include everybody. You know, and it's done under the guise of fighting terrorism.
Well, you see, here's the problem. I mean, if you look at the Fine Gael Labour government, who tried in vain to privatise the health service, right? What did they do? They destroyed it. They absolutely decimated the health service. Then they were going to turn to the people and say, we have the solution, we'll privatise it, everything will be fixed overnight. Now it backfired, it didn't work. So the same process resonates on nearly any issue that we deal with today. Destroy something, make it look really bad, and then come in with the solution. I mean, if you look at social housing and the problems that we're having there, we now have organisations setting up housing associations who are going to ride in on their white horses building houses. And only recently they introduced the new Residential Tenancies Amendment Act of 2015, which basically privatised that whole sector. And that went unnoticed. People didn't bat an eyelid. And like the PRTB, which is the Private Residential Tenancy Board, has changed its name. That went unnoticed. It's just now the Residential Tenancies Board.
So what's the ramifications for that, as opposed to what things would have been like under the PGRSB or whatever it was called?
Okay, well, the reason why they changed from the PRTB to the RTB is because prior to April of this year, you had to be in a private rental accommodation, so you would have had a landlord and so forth. Now, what they done then was they took away the private part and they just made it the Residential Tenancy Board. So now all social housing tenants, now not local authority, just social housing tenants, right, are now under the guidance of this act, which means now that rents can go up, they can evict people with a 56-day notice. I mean, prior to that, local authority struggled and social housing associations struggled to evict people from their homes. As it stands now, not many people are aware of this. Under the Residential Act of 2015, all social housing tenants are currently on a 6-month probation period that ends in October of this year. So from April till October, they're all on a 6-month probationary period.
Is that everyone that's in social housing?
Anyone who's in social housing. Anyone who's in social housing is on a 6-month probation period.
And what happens after the 6 months are up?
You get a contract for 4 years, and every 4 years after that.
So is this going to start happening then in October, that everyone's, like, if someone's got a council house?
No, it's only social housing at the moment. So, like, we'll say housing associations like Fushka, Respond,
NABCO, other...
Yes, all those. For now, but the plan is to bring local authority under the same banner as well.
And roll it out across all the councils.
Roll it out all the councils, and then it'll be privatised. And then somebody like Dennis O'Brien is going to come in and have the biggest social housing development project going. He's going to build houses, and he can put you in there and charge you whatever rent he wants.
I'll get back to him after the break. I need to go to my last set of ads, so do you mind muting your mic for a minute or two, Anthony?
No problem, Tom. Go
That'd
ahead.
be brilliant. Folks, be back in 2 minutes with Anthony Connor. Talk to you very shortly.
You're listening to Liffey Sound, www.liffeysoundfm.ie.
Listen online. Community radio at its best.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. Anthony, you still with me here?
Yes, I have indeed.
That's great. Now, you mentioned Dennis O'Brien there just before the break. I've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to give you as much talk time as possible. I did get a text in from a listener saying I was jumping all over the place and butting in as well, and I apologise for that. I tend to do that when I'm on the radio, but and I know it's not very professional, so again I apologise to the listener if that upset them. I watched a documentary today, a very interesting one. I don't know if you've seen it, called Clinton Cash.
No.
It's about the Clintons and where they get all that cash from. It's a must watch. I recommend it to anybody. I mean, if the average voter in America got to see this, trust me, Hillary will not be getting into office. But Dennis O'Brien comes up in the documentary, gets a mention in relation to Haiti. And when they had that massive earthquake in 2010 in Haiti, the Clinton Foundation basically went in and took over everything. Like, we're going to sort out Haiti. But Haiti has never been sorted. Billions upon billions has been made by massive developers who've done little or nothing in the country. Now, Dennis O'Brien gets a mention because he's a contributor to the Clinton Foundation, and if you want to do big business in certain parts of the world, you need to contribute to that foundation, or at least give Bill $500,000 to do a speech after dinner somewhere. And if you do that, you tend to get the big contracts. And he's a known donator to the Clinton Foundation, but he got a massive contract there for the telecoms system in Haiti. The whole infrastructure was devastated, so it needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. But he got the contract for that. But it's like you said, the cronyism that's going on, and it's highlighted quite a lot in this programme, that if you're willing to line the pockets of these politicians, these corrupt politicians, you do very well then in the business world.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at what Dennis O'Brien came from, I mean, he was a personal assistant, and now he's one of the richest men, in if not in the world, definitely in Europe. But you see, the problem with this is that, as a nation, we accept it. We accept that he obtained his first license for, I think it was ESA at the time, and it was proven to be done fraudulently.
That was the Michael Lowry scandal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And nothing about it, Asha. What can you do? And this is the attitude that Direct Democracy Ireland are trying to change. Are trying to listen. All you need to do is just educate yourself. Just sit down, work out exactly what's going on, why it's going on, and how we can change it. And it's that simple. Again, I'll revert people back to directdemocracy.ie. Download our manifesto, get a look at it, and you'll see exactly the direction that we feel that the country should go. It's to me, a lot of time and effort went into it, but we constructed the manifesto in the most democratic way possible. We went out on the road, we had public meetings, we asked people for their opinion. We had open debates online and so forth in relation to the articles that are in the manifesto, and we feel that it was ignored largely by the mainstream media because we believe there was a lot of questions in it. Even themselves, they couldn't answer. I did not want to answer.
Why do you think? I mean, the last time I had Ben on my show was a couple of months ago. I was talking today about that. So I won't go into it.
Yeah.
But Ben was telling me back then like that he was getting out of politics because DDI done so badly in the election. He done so badly in the election. Why, like, as you just said there, on the street people were listening to you, people were getting what you were saying, and people were getting enthusiastic about what you were saying, and yet then at the polls, everything went tits up, so to speak.
Well,
do you think it's down to the election maybe being rigged, or do you think it's down to people just voting the way their families have always voted and voting for parties that will eventually do nothing for them anyway?
I'd love to say it was rigged. I would. But look. In honesty, what we're dealing with now is a nation where people inherited a vote, so they'll always vote a certain way. Okay, and then we have a lot of the younger people who we need to vote for us who just don't bother going out to vote at all. And it's very disheartening. When you put the time and effort in. I was particularly disappointed for Ben Gilroy, because he'd done so well in the Meadeys by-election in 2013. I really felt that realistically we weren't sure if he'd take a seat, but I thought he'd do a lot better than what he did. The same as myself. I mean, I got 900 forced preference votes. I wasn't expecting to get elected, but I was expecting in or around 1,600 forced preference votes, to try and get me into a transfer situation where I might have done a little bit better.
But when you see, if I could just, I don't want to interrupt you either, but when you see these other young politicians, from the big parties coming in, like from Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour, etc., these unknowns, like in their early 20s, you probably have never even heard of them, and they get thousands of votes.
Yeah, I mean, that happened here in Louth. We had a girl, and a lovely girl, mind you, Emma Coffey was her name. She ran for Fianna Fáil. She's not even from Drogheda, and she made it into the second last count. But
this is what makes me think, is the system rigged? Because if someone who's out there stomping the ground like yourself and Ben were doing, and others in DDI, and they're stomping, knocking on doors, getting people to say, yes, I will vote for you and stuff like that, and then when it goes to the polls, it doesn't reflect what the campaign was showing them, that it might reflect,
Let me kind of simplify what exactly happened to us. While we were in the courts every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, they were all out canvassing.
Yeah, I suppose that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, and they had, I'll give you one. I have a video, and I actually must share it. It's a colleague of mine that has it. When we were in the courtroom in Dundalk, when people were losing their homes, right? Outside was Fine Gael TD's office, Peter Fitzpatrick. And while we were in the courts, right beside the courthouse, he was loading his election posters into the back of a van. Now, he romped home. He didn't have a problem. He didn't even break a sweat. And my belief is this. I mean, you only. I mean, take Sinn Féin for example, and I have a lot of friends in Sinn Féin, and we've been in. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do. If you run under the Sinn Féin name, you're almost guaranteed a seat. And this is what's affecting direct democracy on, because we're not known, because we just don't have that inherited vote. We don't have that dedication from people who will vote for us no matter what.
If it came down to it in future, like say in 4 years' time or another election, would DDI do a pact with Sinn Féin to try and form a government and try and sort this country out?
See, the beauty about direct democracy on this, and I need people to listen to this very carefully, it wouldn't matter who direct democracy went into a coalition with, whether it be Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil. Once they introduce direct democracy, they lose the power, as do we. The power then lies with the people. You take the bailout of 2008. That bailout would never have happened if there was direct democracy, because they would have had to get the consent of the people.
Yeah. It's the same that happened in Iceland, isn't it?
Yeah. So if, just say for example, right, in an ideal world, in the next election, direct democracy will get, we'll say, 7 seats, right? And we're asked to form a rainbow coalition with, we'll say, Fine Gael and Labour. Okay? Now, yeah, no problem. Have a referendum on direct democracy within the next, they say, 6 months, and we'll do it. Because whatever happens, they have to introduce that referendum to have those articles reinstated. Now, that would never happen. They would never. There's no way on this God earth that Fine Gael or Labour or Fianna Fáil, Sinn Féin, any of those parties would give away the power that they have.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, isn't it? The power. It's not about money. It's not about helping people. It's about the power that they've got.
Yes, and if you only have to look at their AGMs, the art festivals and all that kind of stuff, it's all about them. It's all about how we going to recruit members, everything is about the structure and saving. I mean, we should never be electing the likes. We should never be electing Fine Gaels or Fianna Fáils or Labours or any of those parties into power. What we should have is a system where the people have control of their own destiny.
Personally, I think politics should be voluntary. Anyone that's in politics shouldn't be getting paid a penny at all.
Absolutely.
They should take the monetary incentive out of it, and they should also have a blanket ban on any politicians having anything to do with any corporations.
Again, look at the Direct Democracy Manifesto and you'll see the position that we took on that in relation to TDs claiming expenses. What we're looking for as well, I mean, we want all TDs, past, present and future, to have sizing pay cuts, pensions stripped. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous the amount of money that's been.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
only 2 weeks ago they gave themselves a pay rise.
Yeah, $4,000 a year extra or something like that.
And then with people that can't afford to put food on the table, it just astonished me that. I mean, if this was any other country in the world, there'd be riots in the streets. I mean, we've become very complacent. Where's their fight in Irish spirit? I'm not advocating that people come out onto the streets. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we've proven in relation to the stance we took on Irish water that when people do come together,
things can change.
Things can change. And that's all we need to do. Yeah. We need to stand up to our government. But more importantly, what we need to do is we need a referendum on EU membership.
We need to take this country back. Well, listen, Anthony, unfortunately I've run out of time. It is 1:10 now here, so I do have to wrap this up. But listen,
thanks very much.
No, thank you. I'm delighted you came on. And to the listener that sent me in a text about me interrupting, I do apologise. It is bad radio, I do get that. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Anthony, listen, I'll get you on again because you've been very, very informative. It's been a great show.
Thanks very much, Mick.
Thanks very much, Anthony. Talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was Anthony Connor from Direct Democracy Ireland. You can go onto their website, ddi.com, Direct Democracy. If you just type it into Google, you'll find that website. Anyway, this has been The World You Don't Know. I'm not going to be here next week or the week after, folks. I'm going away, taking a wee break down south in Cork. So down to see all the comrades in Cork. Hopefully I might bump into one or two of them down there. So until next week, folks, this has been The World You Don't Know. Let me see, I need to queue up a song here. I had a song there a second ago. Let me see, where's it gone? Can't find. I'll play a bit of Bob Dylan. Haven't heard Bob Dylan in a while. Anyway, I'm going to play a bit of Bob Dylan, knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. We might all be doing that one day. Anyway, till I see you again in a couple of weeks. I will be putting the podcast up tomorrow on The World You Don't Know, so you can listen on there. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll talk to you all again. Remember, the world's full of great people, and if you can't find them, be one. Talk to you all very soon.
9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds. The world you don't know. world you don't know. 9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds.